The final line of the after-action report bled onto the digital page, a sterile summation of chaos. Operation Bronze Lion. The letters glowed green against the black screen of my terminal, a code name that felt both grandiose and utterly inadequate for the 14 hours of controlled tension I had just endured. I pulled my hands from the keyboard, the joints in my fingers cracking a soft protest. The air in the SCIF was always the same, crisp, dry, and smelling faintly of ozone from the server banks and the bitter tang of coffee that had sat on the warmer for too long. A classified chill that seeped right into your bones. Silence was the rule here, a heavy blanket broken only by the constant, low hum of cooling fans and the occasional sigh of another analyst at their station. My world was this windowless room, this symphony of machines, this weight of secrets you carried not on your shoulders, but behind your eyes. Success, the mission was a success. That is what the report stated. That is what I would brief to the colonel in the morning. But sitting there, the adrenaline of the last day and a half finally receding like a tide, the only thing my mind could latch onto was the blinking red light on my secured mobile. The one we were allowed to keep, silenced and locked in a signal-proof box at the door. I had seen it when I came in, a tiny, persistent beacon of the other world, the one that existed outside these reinforced walls. I already knew what it was, a voicemail from my mother. Her voice, a familiar melody of gentle pressure, reminding me about the party. My father's 65th birthday, this Saturday. Do not be late, Simone, and for heaven's sake, call me back. Ever have one of those moments where a single sound, a single word just deflates you? Not in a dramatic way, not a loud pop, more like a slow, quiet leak. All the sharp focus I had maintained for 14 hours straight, all the competence that had just helped navigate a complex, real-world scenario just seeped out. The SCIF did not feel like a place of importance anymore. It felt like a cage. A very quiet, very cold cage. I powered down my terminal, the screen winking to black, erasing Operation Bronze Lion. The ritual of closing out was second nature. Secure the physical documents in the safe, log out of every system, do a visual sweep of the area. My hands performed their duties with muscle memory, but my mind was already 5 years in the past, transported by the ghost of my mother's unplayed message. It was a specific memory, sharpened by humiliation. A family dinner. Of course it was a family dinner. Our family's battlefield was always laid out with a tablecloth and my mother's good china. The memory unfolded in my head with perfect, painful clarity. The air was thick with the smell of fried chicken and collard greens, a comforting aroma that usually felt like a hug. But that night, it felt suffocating. I was home on leave just after I had pinned Sergeant. I was so proud. It was not just a promotion, it was a validation. It meant I was a leader, responsible for the lives and training of soldiers. I had bought a new dress for the occasion, a deep emerald green that I thought made me look grown, professional. I remember sitting at that crowded table, my brother Marcus holding court. He was in his element, his voice a booming, confident instrument. So the client was hesitant, right? Talking about due diligence, environmental impact studies, the whole nine, Marcus said, waving a drumstick for emphasis. I looked the man dead in the eye and I said, "Sir, with all due respect, this land is not just an investment. It is a legacy, your legacy." And let me tell you, that landed. We closed the deal Tuesday. 3.2 million. A collective wave of admiration washed over the table. My mother beamed, patting his arm. 3 million? Lord, Marcus, that is real money. That is my son, my father, Ronald, said, his chest puffed out with pride. He took a sip of sweet tea. A real man providing a real future, that is responsibility. The word responsibility hung in the air and I saw my opening. My heart was thumping a little too fast. This was it. I cleared my throat softly. Speaking of responsibility, I began, my voice sounding smaller than I wanted it to. I have some news too. I got promoted. I am a sergeant now. The table went quiet for a beat, but not the good kind of quiet. Not the odd silence that had followed Marcus's announcement. This was a puzzled quiet. A wait, what did she say? Quiet. My father turned his head toward me, a genial, slightly condescending smile on his face. He chuckled. It was not a mean chuckle, not really. That was the worst part. It was a sound of pure, unadulterated dismissal. That is nice, Simone. That is real nice. Proud of you for sticking with it. He leaned forward, his expression turning earnest, as if he were letting me in on a secret. But when are you going to get a job with some real responsibility? A suit and tie job. The air went out of my lungs. It felt like a physical blow. Real responsibility? I was responsible for millions of dollars of equipment and the lives of a dozen soldiers. But how could I say that? How could I explain the weight of that to a man who measured worth in a quarterly profit statement? Before I could even form a response, my Aunt Clara chimed in. "Oh, Marcus, did I tell you I saw your picture in the business journal? You looked so handsome in that suit." And just like that, the conversation river, which had paused for a mere second at my insignificant tributary, surged back toward its main course, Marcus. I looked down at my plate, the emerald of my dress suddenly feeling childish. The fried chicken tasted like ash. I remember the exact pattern on the plate, a faded blue vine that seemed to twist and tighten around the edges. That was the moment I truly understood my place in the family hierarchy. I was not the successful son. I was not the struggling sister who needed support. I was the oddity, the soldier, the one who played army. The heavy, lead-lined door of the SCIF hissed shut behind me, the bolt sliding home with a definitive thud. The transition was always jarring. From the silent, controlled environment to the bustling, noisy hallway of the intelligence wing. Fluorescent lights hummed overhead, replacing the soft glow of monitors. The sound of boots on linoleum, of casual conversation, of a world that did not carry the same pressurized weight. I walked toward the exit, my own boots making a soft, rhythmic sound. I passed a young private who snapped a quick, sharp salute. "Sergeant First Class," he said, his voice respectful. I returned the salute automatically. "Carry on, Private." The respect was real out here. It was tangible. But with every step toward the parking lot, the armor of my rank felt thinner. The memory of that dinner was joined by another, this one from 3 years ago. The phone call had come late on a Thursday night. I was at my apartment on base, exhausted from a 3-day field exercise. It was Tisha, my younger sister, and she was crying. Not delicate, pretty tears, but the ragged, gasping sobs of true despair. "Simone, it is Michael, his bonus, it was nothing. Half of what they promised. We were counting on it, Simone. The van, we found the perfect minivan for the kids, and now we cannot even make the down payment. The lease is up on our car next month. I do not know what we are going to do." Her voice was a knife twisting in my gut. Tisha, with her 2 babies. Tisha, who always saw me as her strong big sister, even if she never quite understood what my strength was for. "Tish, breathe, just breathe," I said, my voice calm, the voice I used with nervous soldiers. "How much do you need?" She mumbled a figure through her tears. $15,000. A staggering amount, but I had just received my re-enlistment bonus. It was sitting in my account, a reward for signing away another 4 years of my life. A reward for missing holidays, for enduring deployments, for the constant, low-grade stress of my job. I did not even hesitate. "Give me your account number," I said. "What? No, Simone, I cannot ask you for that." "You did not ask, I am offering. Consider it an early inheritance. Just do not tell anyone, okay? Not Mama, not Daddy, and especially not Marcus." I knew how it would look, like I was showing off. Or worse, like my army money was pity money. I transferred the funds right then, watching the numbers in my account shrink dramatically. A part of me felt a sharp pang of fear, but a bigger part felt a surge of purpose. This I could do. I could fix this. I could be the hero, even if it was a secret one. The next Sunday, at my parents' house, the mood was completely different. Tisha was beaming, holding onto Michael's arm. "We got the van," she announced to the family. Michael landed a huge new client last week. It was so unexpected, but it came with an advance that covered the down payment and then some. My mother had clapped her hands together. "Praise God, Michael, that is wonderful." My father had clapped Michael on the back. "I knew you had it in you, son. A man provides for his family." I stood by the punch bowl, sipping on a too-sweet drink. I caught Tisha's eye across the room. She gave me a small, almost imperceptible nod, her eyes full of a gratitude she could not voice. And I nodded back. It was our secret. But as I watched my family celebrate Michael, the man who had provided, I felt a peculiar emptiness. My sacrifice, my re-enlistment bonus, the tangible proof of my own responsibility, had been laundered into his success. I had bought him the admiration of my father. And I had to stand there and smile about it. I finally reached my car, a sensible sedan that blended in with every other car in the lot. I unlocked it and slid into the driver's seat, but I did not start the engine. I just sat there in the silence, the North Carolina heat already beginning to fog the windows. I had to call my mother back. I could not put it off any longer. I took a deep breath, the air in the car stale and warm, and hit the dial button. It rang only once. "Simone, baby, is that you?" Her voice was like warm honey, but I could hear the underlying tension. The clock was ticking on her party planning. "Yes, Mama, it is me. I got your message. I am off this weekend. I will be there." "Oh, good." The relief in her voice was palpable. "It would not be the same without you. Your father would be so disappointed." There it was, the guilt, laid on thick and smooth. I closed my eyes, leaning my head back against the headrest. "I know, Mama. I would not miss it." "Good, now listen." Her tone shifted, becoming practical, which from her always meant critical. "And honey, please try to wear something nice. Maybe a dress. You always look so stiff in your uniforms." The words landed like a series of small, precise needles. Stiff. It was not just a comment on the fabric. It was a comment on me. On my posture, my demeanor, the very essence of the professionalism I worked so hard to cultivate. To her, my uniform was a costume, a barrier. It was not something to be proud of, it was something to be shed in favor of something nice. Something softer, something less me. I felt a hot flush creep up my neck. "I will see what I have, Mama." "Okay, baby, I have to go, the caterer is on the other line. Love you." "Love you too," I muttered to the dead air, the phone already having clicked off. I started the car, the engine purring to life. The third memory came unbidden, this one more recent. Marcus's promotion party, a year ago. A fancy steakhouse downtown, all dark wood and soft lighting. Everyone was there. The toasts went on for what felt like an hour. My father gave a speech about Marcus's work ethic. My mother cried. A grainy photo from the business journal was passed around the table, everyone oohing and ahhing. I sat at the end of the table, feeling like a spectator at a play about a family I did not quite belong to. My Aunt Ruth, who is sweet but perpetually confused, leaned toward me. "And Simone, dear, what have you been up to?" "Still in the army." Every eye at the table swiveled to me for a fleeting second. It was my cue. I could have said, "Actually, Aunt Ruth, I just led a joint forces training exercise that was praised by a 2-star general." I could have said, "I am responsible for the operational readiness of a multi-million-dollar intelligence section." But the expectant looks on their faces were not looks of curiosity. They were polite, blank slates waiting for a simple, uninteresting answer they could quickly acknowledge before returning to the main event. I gave them what they wanted. I offered a small, tight smile. "Oh, you know, Aunt Ruth, army stuff." She patted my hand, her expression one of gentle pity. "That is nice, dear. It is good to have a steady job." And then she turned back to Marcus, and the spotlight, dim as it was on me, vanished completely. I was a ghost at the feast. The drive home was a blur. My mind was a jumble of these memories, a highlight reel of my own insignificance. By the time I walked into my quiet, orderly apartment, the fatigue from the long shift had merged with a profound emotional exhaustion. The party was in 2 days. I had to pack. I went to my closet and opened the doors. On one side hung my civilian clothes, a few dresses, some slacks, blouses. On the other side, shrouded in plastic garment bags, were my uniforms. My army greens, my service uniform. The one with the sergeant first class insignia on the collar, the ribbons on my chest, the name tape that read Washington. My mother's voice echoed in my head, "Wear something nice, a dress." My hand went to the garment bag, my fingers tracing the outline of the uniform underneath the plastic. This uniform was not stiff. It was structured. It was a second skin woven from discipline, sacrifice, and honor. Every ribbon had a story. The Army Commendation Medal for that logistics nightmare during the hurricane relief. The overseas service ribbon for a year in a place I still could not talk about. The sergeant first class rank I had fought for, bled for, earned. I unzipped the bag slowly. The smell of wool and clean, starched cotton wafted out. I ran my fingers over the 3 chevrons and the 2 rockers, the symbol of my rank. This was real responsibility. This was a real job. But was I strong enough to wear it there? To walk into my father's birthday party in this? To invite the questions, the polite confusion, the inevitable comparisons to Marcus and his suit? It would be a declaration of war in a room where I was the only one equipped for battle. With a sigh that felt like it came from the very bottom of my soul, I reached past the uniform. I took down a simple black dress, a safe, inoffensive choice. I folded it neatly and placed it in my small suitcase. Then I paused, my hand hovering back over the uniform. No. I would not let them make me hide. Not this time. Maybe I would not have the courage to wear it, but I would give myself the option. I carefully unbuttoned the uniform jacket from the hanger. It was heavy, substantial. I laid it in the suitcase, smoothing out the sleeves, arranging the trousers beside it. I placed my dress shoes in a separate bag. My hand lingered on the rank insignia one last time, the metal cool and reassuring beneath my fingertips. The anxiety was a live wire in my chest, buzzing with the anticipation of walking back into that arena of expectations. But beneath the anxiety, for the first time all night, there was a flicker of something else. Something that felt a little bit like defiance. The fabric of my dress felt alien against my skin. It was a simple sheath dress, navy blue, conservative, the kind of thing a woman who was not a soldier would wear to a nice dinner. I had stood in front of the narrow mirror in my on-post quarters for a full 10 minutes, turning, assessing. The dress was armor of a different kind, meant to signal compliance, to blend into the mahogany and crystal world of my father's birthday celebration. It was a peace offering, a white flag. Ever try to shrink yourself to fit into a room you have outgrown? You hold your breath. You make yourself small. You hope that this time, just maybe, you will be seen as the woman you are, not the girl they remember. The restaurant, the Gilded Fork, was exactly as pretentious as it sounded. The air was thick with the scent of seared steak, expensive whiskey, and the faint, cloying sweetness of perfume. It was a symphony of muted colors, deep burgundy walls, dark wood, golden light from crystal chandeliers that cast shimmering reflections on polished silverware. The sound was a low hum of cultivated conversation, the soft clink of glasses, and underneath it all, the familiar, percussive rhythm of my family's laughter. It was a sound that had always felt like home, but for me, it had become the soundtrack to my own invisibility. I spotted them immediately. A long table in the center of the room, a kingdom of Washingtons. My father, Ronald, held court at the head, his laugh booming, the silver at his temples glinting. My mother, Clara, was to his right, elegant in a lavender suit, her hand resting on his arm, her smile not quite reaching her eyes. And then there was Marcus. Of course, Marcus. He was already holding a glass of amber liquid, holding forth on some business deal, his voice just a decibel too loud, ensuring the surrounding tables were part of his audience. I took a steadying breath, my posture automatically straightening, my shoulders pulling back, military bearing. It was my default setting, a physiological response to stress. I walked towards the table, my low heels making no sound on the plush carpet. My mother saw me first. Her smile widened, becoming more genuine. "Simone," she said, her voice warm. "You made it." The conversation didn't stop. It was like I was a minor eddy in a fast-moving river. A few heads turned, offered quick smiles, and turned back to Marcus. I leaned down to kiss my father's cheek. He smelled of cologne and cigar smoke. "Happy birthday, Dad." "Simone," he said, patting my back awkwardly. "Good of you to come. Was the traffic bad?" Before I could answer, a heavy hand clapped me on the back, making me stumble a step. Marcus. He pulled me into a one-armed, whiskey-scented hug. "Well, look what the cat dragged in. Sis, you clean up good. For a minute I thought you were a real person." He guffawed at his own joke. I could feel the heat of embarrassment crawl up my neck. "Seriously though, you still out there playing soldier? Or did you finally come to your senses and decide to get a real job?" The words were a familiar acid, eating away at the edges of my composure. Playing soldier. As if the last 16 years of my life, the deployments, the responsibility for millions of dollars of equipment, and the lives of the soldiers in my squad were equivalent to a child with a toy rifle. I forced a tight smile, the kind you give a stranger who has bumped into you on the subway. "Still serving, Marcus. It is a real job. It pays the bills." "Yeah, but what kind of bills?" He chuckled, leaning in conspiratorially. "You driving a Porsche yet? Just got the new one. Turbo S, a monster on the road. You should come by, I will take you for a spin, show you what a real career can get you." He jingled the keys in his pocket, the sound a tiny, metallic boast. I did not want to see his car. I did not want to spin. I wanted to tell him that the last vehicle I commanded was a 20-ton armored fighting vehicle in the dust-choked streets of a city whose name I could not mention, that the only thing I cared about on that road was not speed, but the absence of improvised explosives. But I said nothing. I just nodded. What was the point? To him, a Porsche was success. To me, it was a shiny liability. I found my assigned seat, sandwiched between my cousin Lily, who was texting furiously under the table, and my sister Tisha. Tisha was in her element, orchestrating the seating of her 2 young children with the intensity of a field general. She had a wipe in one hand, a sippy cup in the other. "Simone, honey, can you move Jason's high chair just a scooch? Thank you. Oh, and watch your dress, he's been a little dribbly today." I complied, the metal legs of the high chair scraping softly on the floor. Tisha finally sat, smoothing her designer dress down over her knees. She let out a long, performative sigh. "Lord, it is a full-time job, but it is the most rewarding job in the world. I tell you, Simone, you just do not know what real stress is until you have 2 little ones depending on you for everything." She gave me a look that was meant to be sympathetic, but landed as condescending. I thank God every day that Kevin has such a secure, stable job at the firm. The benefits are a lifesaver. It is so important to have that foundation when you are raising a family. You will understand one day. Secure, stable. The words were a mantra in my family, a shield against the chaos of the world. My job, by their definition, was neither. It was transient, dangerous, unpredictable. The foundation I stood on was not a corporate ladder but the U.S. Constitution, and I had seen firsthand how shaky that foundation could be in certain parts of the world. But to them, my service was a placeholder, a quirk I would outgrow before settling down to the real business of life. I picked up my water glass, the condensation cool against my fingertips. The hollow pain was there, a familiar emptiness in my gut. This was the ritual, the diminishing. The reduction of my life's work to a phase, a game, a less than. I looked around the table at the faces I loved, faces that had cheered me at graduations, held me at grandparents' funerals, and yet could not see the person I had become. The loneliness of it was a physical weight. How do you explain the weight of a secret to people who only understand the weight of a mortgage? The dinner service began. Plates of food appeared, beautifully arranged, a far cry from the chow hall or an MRE eaten in the dirt. The conversation ebbed and flowed around me. Real estate markets, private schools, the latest neighborhood gossip. I contributed little. When I did speak about a book I had read or a trip I had taken to a non-deployed location, the responses were polite, distracted. My stories were curiosities, my brothers were case studies. Then my father stood up, tapping his knife against his crystal water glass. The room fell into an expectant hush. This was the moment. The birthday speech. Ronald Washington loved a good speech. "Clara, my love," he began, his voice booming with practiced warmth. "My children, my wonderful family and friends, thank you all for being here to celebrate with me. 65 years on this earth. Hard to believe." He paused for the murmured affirmations. "When I look out at this table, I see my greatest accomplishments. I see a life built on hard work and family." His eyes found Marcus. "My son, Marcus, I look at the man you have become, the businessman you are, it fills me with such pride. The way you have grown the firm, the reputation you are building. You have truly taken the legacy I started and are running with it. Your mother and I are so proud." Marcus puffed out his chest, nodding graciously, the golden boy basking in the glow. Dad's gaze then shifted to Tisha. "And my daughter, Tisha, you have built a beautiful family. You are a wonderful mother, a supportive wife. You have created a home, a sanctuary. That is the most important work of all." Tisha beamed, reaching for her husband Kevin's hand. Then his eyes landed on me. They held the same affection, but it was tempered with something else. Pity, patience. He smiled, a gentle, patronizing curve of his lips. "And my youngest, Simone." He paused, and I could feel the entire table's attention shift to me, a spotlight of mild curiosity. "She is still finding her way in the world, trying different things, seeing what fits." He gave a little chuckle, and a few family members chuckled with him, as if I were a quirky artist dabbling in watercolors. "But she is here, and she is healthy, and that is what counts. We are just happy to have her with us tonight." The words landed not like a blow, but like a slow-acting poison. Still finding her way. It erased everything. It erased the promotions, the certifications, the commendations. It reduced my service to a series of youthful indiscretions. The hollow pain in my gut spread, becoming a cold, hard knot. I kept my face neutral, a mask of polite gratitude, but inside I was screaming. I am not lost. I have never been more found. I have a map of the world etched into my memory, and a purpose clearer than anything in this room. The moment of silence that followed was broken by my Uncle Lyric, my father's brother, who had clearly been enjoying the open bar. His voice slurred slightly as he boomed, "Yeah, Ronnie, at least she is not a deadbeat." He laughed, a loud, hearty guffaw. The table erupted. It was not malicious laughter, not really. It was the laughter of relief, of agreement, of shared understanding. It was the sound of a family affirming its lowest common denominator for its most puzzling member. At least she is not a deadbeat. The bar was so low it was a tripping hazard in hell. The laughter washed over me, and I felt myself detach, my mind retreating to a place of cool, procedural calm. This was a mission now, a mission of endurance. Survive the dinner. Maintain composure. Extract at the earliest opportunity. I focused on my breathing. In, out. I looked at the painting on the wall behind my father, a bland landscape of a country that did not exist. I counted the crystals on the chandelier. I did anything to not feel the sting of their laughter. My military bearing was all I had left. It was my shield, my fortress. They could not see the cracks if I did not let them. And then, the atmosphere in the room changed. It was subtle at first, a drop in the conversational hum. The sound of the restaurant's heavy oak door opening, followed by a sudden, respectful silence that seemed to radiate outward from the entrance. Heads turned. The air itself felt different, charged, like the moment before a thunderstorm. I felt it before I saw him, a shift in the gravitational pull of the room. I turned my head. Standing in the doorway, silhouetted against the dim light of the lobby, was a man in an army service uniform. But this was no ordinary soldier. The uniform was impeccably tailored, the dark green fabric sharp and severe. On his shoulders were the silver eagles of a colonel. His chest was not just a display of ribbons, it was a tapestry, a history written in colored cloth and polished metal. I scanned it automatically, my eyes tracing the story of his career. The Combat Infantryman Badge. The Ranger tab, and there, stark and unmistakable, the Special Forces tab. This was not a staff officer. This was a warrior who had led from the front for decades. The room was utterly silent. You could hear the soft jazz music from the speakers, the clink of a glass from the kitchen. My family's table had gone completely still. My father's fork was poised in midair. Marcus's mouth was slightly agape. They were transfixed, trying to process the sudden intrusion of raw, undeniable authority into their genteel world. The colonel's eyes, sharp and assessing, scanned the room. They did not linger on the wealthy patrons or the opulent decor. They moved with a purpose, a targeting system, and then they stopped. They landed squarely on me. Time seemed to slow. I saw the recognition in his gaze, the slight, almost imperceptible nod. He began to walk toward our table. His stride was not a stroll, it was a measured, purposeful march. Each footfall was precise. The sound of his polished low quarters on the hardwood floor near the entrance was like a metronome ticking off the seconds. The entire restaurant watched him. He was a predator moving through a field of prey, and they instinctively knew to be still. He stopped directly before me. He was not a large man, but his presence filled the space, commanding it. He came to a perfect position of attention, his spine straight, his shoulders back, his heels together. His right hand snapped up in a razor-sharp salute, his fingers aligned, his thumb and forefinger forming a perfect seam, the tip of his index finger touching the brim of his service cap exactly 1 inch above his right eyebrow. It was an instinct, a reaction drilled into me over thousands of repetitions. I rose to my feet, my chair scraping back. My body aligned itself automatically. I raised my own hand, returning the salute with equal precision, my eyes locked with his. "Colonel," I said, my voice clear and steady, cutting through the profound silence. He dropped his salute, and I dropped mine. He did not smile. His expression was one of utmost seriousness. "Sergeant First Class Washington," he said, his voice a low, resonant baritone that carried to every corner of the hushed room. "I apologize for the interruption, ma'am, but I was in the area and was instructed to deliver this to you personally." "Ma'am," the honorific from a colonel to a sergeant, spoken with genuine respect. He reached inside his jacket and produced a long, white envelope, sealed with official tape. He handed it to me. I took it, my fingers brushing against the crisp paper. The command sends its congratulations on your upcoming assignment to JSOC as a team sergeant. The acronym, Joint Special Operations Command, hung in the air, cryptic and heavy with implication. My heart was a drum in my chest. This was it, the orders I had been waiting for. The culmination of years of selection, assessment, and silent, grueling work. He continued, his eyes never leaving mine. Your work on Operation Veiled Sword was instrumental. The director himself signed your orders. Operation Veiled Sword. The name was a ghost in the room, a classified phantom that hinted at things my family could not possibly comprehend. The director, the head of JSOC, the weight of the envelope in my hand felt immense. Then Colonel Davies did something extraordinary. He turned slightly, just enough to include my stunned, silent family in his address. His gaze swept over their frozen faces, my father's ashen complexion, my mother's hand clamped over her mouth, Marcus's look of utter disbelief. "You should be very proud of your daughter," he said, and his voice, while still formal, held a note of profound sincerity. "The work she does is something most people, including myself on my best day, could not handle." He paused, letting those words sink in. A colonel, a man who wore the badge of a Special Forces warrior, was telling my family that my work was beyond his capabilities. The sheer, impossible scale of that statement was written on their faces. "It is an honor to serve with her." He turned back to me, came to attention once more, and rendered a final, crisp salute. "Carry on, Sergeant." "Thank you, Colonel," I said, returning the salute. He executed a perfect about-face and walked out of the restaurant with the same purposeful stride, the door closing behind him with a soft, final thud. The silence he left in his wake was deafening. It was a vacuum, sucking all the sound and air out of the room. The gilded fork remained frozen, a tableau of shock. My family's table was a statue garden. My father's face had lost all its color. His jaw was slack, his eyes wide with a confusion so deep it bordered on terror. His fork, which he had been holding throughout the entire exchange, finally slipped from his numb fingers and clattered onto his china plate, the sound explosive in the silence. My mother had both hands over her mouth now, her eyes wide, shimmering with unreadable emotion, shock, yes, but also a dawning, horrifying realization. Marcus looked like he had been struck by lightning. All the smug confidence had drained from his face, leaving behind a pale, bewildered mask. He stared at me as if seeing me for the first time. Tisha was gripping the tablecloth, her knuckles white. I did not look at them for long. I slowly, deliberately lowered myself back into my chair. The envelope felt hot in my hands. I ran my thumb under the seal, the paper tearing with a crisp sound. I pulled out a single sheet of paper. The heading was stark, unambiguous, Department of the Army. And below that, in bold, black letters, Joint Special Operations Command, Fort Bragg, North Carolina. I did not need to read the rest. I knew what it said. I smoothed the paper on the white tablecloth, the official typeface a stark contrast to the fancy script of the menu. I placed it deliberately on the table, right in the center, turning it so the words were facing my father. Then I stood up. I did not look at anyone. I did not say a word. I picked up my small clutch purse from beside my plate. The scrape of my chair was the only sound. I turned and I walked. I walked past my speechless father, my stunned mother, my obliterated brother. I walked through the restaurant, feeling the weight of every eye upon me. But this time, it was not the weight of pity or dismissal. It was the weight of awe, the weight of respect. I pushed open the heavy door and stepped out into the cool night air. It felt clean, washing away the stifling atmosphere of the restaurant. I did not look back. I walked to my car, a sensible sedan, and got inside. I sat there for a long moment, my hands resting on the steering wheel, watching the light from the restaurant windows spill onto the pavement. I had not won anything. I had not defeated anyone. But I had finally, after a lifetime of being unseen, been recognized. And I had left the echoing shockwave of that recognition behind me, rippling through the foundations of my family, forcing them to finally, truly, see the woman I had become. The steering wheel was cool and solid beneath my hands, a familiar anchor in a world that had just tilted off its axis. The hum of the tires on the pavement was the only sound, a low thrumming that vibrated up through the floorboards and into my bones. I did not turn on the radio. I did not call anyone. I just drove, my mind oddly quiet, my body operating on the muscle memory of 1,000 trips home from work. But this was different. The air in the car felt different, charged with the aftershock of what had just happened. Colonel Mace's voice still echoed in my ears, his words hanging in the space around me like visible things. Sergeant First Class Simone Washington, one of the most decorated analysts in our command, a critical role at JSOC. Ever have one of those moments where reality just stops, where the picture you've had of yourself, the one everyone else has been painting for you your whole life, just cracks right down the middle and a completely different image bleeds through? That was the drive home. It was not a victory lap. There was no triumphant music swelling in my head. It was a surreal, heavy calm, the kind that settles over a battlefield after the artillery has fallen silent. The smoke is still clearing, and you are just standing there, amazed that you are still standing at all. My phone, resting in the cup holder, began to vibrate. The screen lit up, casting a pale blue glow on the console. Mom, the name flashed, persistent, demanding. I let it go to voicemail. A few seconds of silence, then it buzzed again. Dad, then Marcus, then Aunt Carol. It became a frantic, blinking chorus, a dissonant symphony of familial panic. I did not touch it. I just watched the names appear and disappear, each buzz a tiny seismic event in the quiet cabin. They were on the other side of the chasm now, and I was in no hurry to build a bridge. Pulling into the parking lot of my apartment building, I killed the engine. The sudden silence was absolute. I sat for a long moment, just breathing, letting the solid, unimpressed facade of my building ground me. This was my space, my sanctuary. No family portraits with me on the edges, no comparing trophies, just my books, my comfortable couch, the faint smell of citrus cleaner I liked. I grabbed my phone, the screen now a scroll of notifications, and walked inside. I dropped my keys into the ceramic bowl by the door with a satisfying clatter, kicked off my heels, and padded into the living room. I did not pour a drink. I did not cry. I just sat on the edge of the sofa, the fabric cool against my palms, and I scrolled. The messages were a study in chaos. From Mom, sent just minutes after I left. Simone, please call me. We are so confused. What was that about? Who was that man? Then 5 minutes later. Honey, answer your phone. Your father is upset. 10 minutes after that. Simone, this is not like you. Please, we need to talk about this. From Marcus, his tone leaping right past confusion to accusation. What the hell was that? JSOC? Since when? You couldn't have mentioned you were some kind of secret agent. You made us all look like fools. Aunt Carol, ever the dramatic. Baby, are you in some kind of trouble? That man was very intense. Do we need to lawyer up? Uncle James, your mama is worried sick. Call her. And then from my cousin Tisha, a simple, damn cuz for real. I read each one. I absorbed the words, the punctuation, the subtext screaming from between the lines. My mother's messages were about control, about restoring the narrative she understood. My father's silence in the text chain was louder than any message he could have sent. Marcus's were pure, unadulterated ego injury. I felt a strange detachment, as if I were reading about someone else's family drama. I placed the phone face down on the coffee table. I would not respond. Not tonight. The boundary, though unspoken, had been drawn in front of all of them by a colonel with stars in his eyes and respect in his voice. And for the first time, I was going to respect it too. The 2 weeks that followed were some of the most professionally satisfying of my life. The world inside the SCIF was a perfect, structured universe of clear protocols and measurable outcomes. The air was always cool and dry, smelling of ozone from the server banks and stale coffee. The only sounds were the muted clicking of keyboards, the low hum of cooling fans, and the calm, precise voices of my team. I stood before a digital map of a region I could not name, pointer in hand, addressing 4 junior analysts. They were sharp, fresh-faced, hungry to prove themselves. I remembered that feeling. The pattern is not in the content, I said, my voice echoing slightly in the enclosed space. It is in the rhythm. The metadata is the message. Look at the timing of these pings, the duration, the shift in encryption protocols, minor but consistent every 72 hours. That is not random. That is a shift change. That is a pattern of life. I watched as their eyes widened, as they leaned forward, connecting the dots I was laying out for them. There was no questioning my authority here. No behind-the-back glances. My worth was demonstrated, not debated. My word was the final word. This was my sanctuary. This was where I was not Simone the overlooked daughter or the underachieving sister. I was Sergeant First Class Washington, Team Sergeant, and the weight of that responsibility was a mantle I wore with pride. It was during a quiet moment, late in the afternoon, that my personal phone, locked in a secure drawer, vibrated with a distinct pattern indicating a text message. I finished delegating tasks to my team before I retrieved it. It was from Marcus. The message was long. I had to scroll to read it all. Simone, I have had 2 weeks to think, and I am so ashamed. I have replayed 100 conversations in my head. That time you tried to explain your deployment, and I cut you off to talk about a deal I was closing. The way Dad and I would talk over you at the dinner table. I never took the time to understand what you do. I was a jealous, arrogant fool. I measured everyone, including you, against my own idea of success, and I was too blind to see that you were operating on a whole different level. The way we treated you was wrong, unforgivably wrong. You are, without a doubt, the most accomplished person in this family, and we were idiots. I am so sorry. I read it twice, then a third time. The words did not compute at first. An apology from Marcus? A real one without qualification or blame shifting? This was uncharted territory. The resolve I had built, the wall of detached calm, developed a hairline fracture. A hot pressure built behind my eyes. I saw him, not as the arrogant brother at the party, but as the little boy who used to let me hold his hand when we crossed the street. I leaned back in my chair, the reinforced metal groaning slightly under my weight. The sterile, fluorescent light of the SCIF seemed to soften for a moment. I did not reply immediately. I let the words sit. I needed to feel the full weight of them to see if they would hold. The next day, my mother called. The phone rang, her picture flashing on the screen, but the tone was different. It was not the insistent, frantic buzzing from the night of the party. It was a single, almost tentative ring. I let it go to voicemail. A minute later, a text arrived. Simone, it is Mom. I understand if you do not want to talk, but if you are willing, your father and I would like to see you. Just for coffee. No pressure. No big family gathering, just us. Please let me know if that is something you would consider. The please did it, the politeness, the absence of demand. It was so foreign, so unlike her usual cadence. The crack in my resolve widened. I took a deep breath and typed a reply. Saturday, 10 a.m., the place on Madison Street. The coffee shop was one of those trendy, exposed brick places that served pour-overs and oat milk lattes. It was neutral territory. I arrived first, choosing a table in the back, near a large window overlooking a small, manicured courtyard. I ordered a black coffee and waited, my hands wrapped around the warm ceramic mug. I watched the door. When they walked in, they looked smaller somehow. Older. My father, Ronald, usually so broad and commanding, seemed to have shrunk into his crisp polo shirt. His shoulders were slumped. My mother, Joyce, scanned the room, her eyes finding me with a nervous flicker. She gave a small, tight smile that did not reach her eyes. They approached the table like negotiators entering a tense summit. Simone, my mother said, her voice soft, thank you for meeting us. My father just nodded, pulling out a chair for her before sitting down himself. He still could not quite look at me directly, his gaze fixed somewhere around my chin. The silence stretched, thick and uncomfortable. A barista clanged a portafilter, and we all jumped slightly. My mother cleared her throat. How have you been, honey? I have been well, Mom. Work is busy. I kept my voice even, professional. I was not going to make this easy for them. They had asked for this meeting. They had to cross the no man's land. My father finally spoke, his voice a low rumble, his eyes focused on the wood grain of the table. The Colonel called me. The air left my lungs. I had not been expecting that. I took a slow sip of coffee, buying time. Which Colonel would that be, Dad? Mace, he said, the name sounding foreign and heavy in his mouth. He called me 3 days after the party. He did not give details. He could not. But he told me. My father's voice cracked. He stopped, swallowed hard, and forced himself to meet my eyes. The regret there was so raw, so deep, it was like a physical blow. He told me that if I had any concept of the weight you carry and the lives you have saved through your work, I would have gotten down on my knees and thanked God for you every single day. His eyes glistened. He said you are a national treasure. A national treasure. And I laughed at you. The words hung between us. My mother had a tissue clenched in her fist, dabbing at her own eyes. The sounds of the coffee shop faded away. All I could see was the profound shame on my father's face. The idol I had spent my life trying to impress had fallen, and he was just a man, a fallible man, shattered by his own failure. "Oh, baby," my mother whispered. "We had no idea. We thought you were just pushing papers. We thought you were hiding behind this job because you were stuck." "Because I was not a doctor or a lawyer," I finished for her, my voice quiet but firm. "Yes," she admitted, a fresh wave of tears coming. "And we are so sorry." I looked from one to the other. The anger I had been carrying, the cold hard stone of it, began to soften, to melt under the heat of their genuine remorse. It was not gone, but it was changing shape. "What I do," I began, choosing my words with the same care I used when writing a classified briefing, "is cryptologic analysis. I support special operations. I work with intelligence that is so sensitive its compromise could cost lives. American lives, the lives of our allies. My clearance is not just a piece of paper. It is a sacred trust. I cannot talk about my deployments. I cannot tell you the things I have seen or the decisions I have helped guide. My value is not in a title you can boast about at a country club. My value is in the silence, in the threats that never materialize because my team and I did our jobs correctly." My father was listening now, truly listening, for the first time in his life. He was not waiting for his turn to talk. He was hearing me. "So here are my boundaries," I said, leaning forward. "My career is not up for discussion. It is not a topic for debate or comparison. You do not get to question my choices or my worth anymore. My worth is not determined by your understanding. I need you to respect that. I need you to trust that when I say I cannot talk about something, it is for a reason that is bigger than all of us." My mother reached across the table and placed her hand over mine. Her skin was soft, her grip firm. "We do, Simone. We trust you. And we are so proud of you. We are just sorry it took a stranger to knock some sense into us to see it." It was not a magical fix. The coffee grew cold in our cups. The conversation was stilted, careful, but a new foundation had been laid. It was fragile, but it was honest. A few days later, there was a knock on my apartment door. I was not expecting anyone. I looked through the peephole and saw Tisha standing there, shifting her weight from one foot to the other. She was alone. No kids, no dramatic entourage. I opened the door. "Tisha." "Hey, Simone," she said, giving me a small smile. "Can I come in? I am not here to ask for anything, I swear." I stepped aside. She walked in, looking around my tidy living room with a new kind of curiosity. "Nice place," she said. "It is really peaceful." "Thank you. Can I get you something to drink?" "Nah, I am good." She sat on the edge of the sofa, just like I had 2 weeks earlier. I wanted to see you, after everything. What happened at Auntie's that was wild?" "It was unexpected," I agreed, sitting across from her. "Simone, all those times I came to you with my drama, asking for money, talking your ear off, you never once threw your own stuff in my face. You never said, 'Tisha, I am out here doing real important work and you are worrying about nonsense.' You just listened. You helped me." She shook her head, her elaborate braids swaying. "I never respected your strength. I thought I was the strong one, out here being a single mom, surviving. But your strength is quiet. It is deep. I see that now." I just wanted to say, "I see you now, sis, for real." The simplicity of her acknowledgement, the lack of ego in it, was more powerful than any grand apology. It was sisterly. It was real. "Thank you, Tisha," I said, and for the first time in a long time, I meant it. 6 months later, the smell of charcoal and hickory smoke hung in the warm evening air at my parents' house. It was a smaller barbecue than usual, just immediate family. The atmosphere was different. Subdued, respectful. I stood near the grill with Marcus. He was flipping burgers, a cold beer in his hand. "So, this new contract," he was saying, "it is a lot of responsibility, a lot of moving parts. I was thinking about what you said about managing teams, about delegation. I think I need to restructure my project management approach." I nodded, taking a sip of my iced tea. "You cannot micromanage excellence, Marcus. You hire good people, you give them a clear objective and the tools to succeed, and you get out of their way. Trust is your most valuable currency." He looked at me, really listened, and nodded. "You are right, you are absolutely right." There was no condescension in his voice, no competition. He was speaking to me as an equal, more than an equal, as someone whose opinion he genuinely valued. Later, Uncle James ambled over. "Simone, your dad was telling me you got another award. Could not tell him what for, of course." He chuckled, but it was not a mocking sound, it was proud. "Way to represent, baby girl, way to represent." The most profound shift was in my father. When some neighbors stopped by to say hello, he put his arm around my shoulders, a gesture that felt both new and familiar. "This is my daughter, Simone," he said, his voice thick with a pride I had never heard directed at me before. "She serves our country." There were no more prying questions, no comparisons. There was a space around me now, a respectful distance that felt like love. It was not the suffocating, demanding love of before. It was a love that trusted me, that saw me, and that had finally learned its boundaries. As the sun began to set, painting the sky in streaks of orange and purple, I found a quiet spot on the back porch steps. I could hear the laughter from inside, the easy flow of conversation. It was not perfect. Scars remained, but it was healed. It was healthy. I looked out at the backyard, at the familiar sight of my family, and I thought about the journey. Ever spend your whole life waiting for a spotlight that never comes? You keep checking the switch, thinking there must be something wrong with you, that you are not bright enough to be seen. But here is the thing. The spotlight was never the point. It was always about finding your own light, your own power. The validation I had desperately sought from them was a hollow substitute for the validation I had to cultivate within myself. My worth was not in a promotion or a title, even one as flashy as JSOC. My worth was in the quiet certainty I carried in my soul. It was in the integrity of my work, the strength of my character, the unwavering knowledge that I was living my truth, even when no one else understood it. The journey from seeking external validation to finding unwavering internal worth, it is the hardest mission any of us will ever undertake. But it is the only one that matters. So if you are out there feeling unseen, underestimated, dismissed by the very people who are supposed to see you the clearest, I am here to tell you, stand firm. Stand firm in your truth. Do not dim your light because their eyes are adjusted to the dark. Your value does not decrease based on someone's inability to see your worth. It is inherent. It is yours. And sometimes, the greatest victory is not in forcing them to see you, but in realizing you never needed their approval to shine.